What's up, you guys? Godzilla fan freaks coming at you today with another figure review. And today we are going to be taking a look at another Tekken figure. We're going to be looking at the Tamashii Nations SH Figuarts King figure from Tekken 8. So this is for all those Tekken fans out there. I'm a Tekken fan, and I just hate to say it almost, but Tamashii Nations quality with the Tekken figures is just... Even King here, which doesn't really have any quality issues, more or less joint, choices, like why they still decide to use older style joints on newer figures still baffles me when the other figures in the Tekken line utilize all these new bodies and joints and stuff that just work better. But that's not to say that King here's a bad figure. The quality is still there. And I will say for $74, picking him up on Amazon, he is well worth that price. I would be a little more, leery towards that normal $85 to $90 price point that he usually goes for. Luckily, if you just keep an eye out on these guys on Amazon, sometimes you'll find them for discount. And, it's a little bit more worth it that way and a little easier on the wallet. And this will be my first figure review with something long overdue. As you guys can see, I finally decided to pick myself up a little Lazy Susan automatic turntable. Now, this is going to be mainly used for a lot of the smaller figures. So again, SH Figuarts, Bandai figures, stuff like that. I will eventually have to get a bigger, with more radius Lazy Susan in the future if I want to do like, X Plus figures on them and so on and so forth. But this will be a good test run with King. I don't have him in too much of a crazy pose because, again, all his flair, we'll get onto that in a minute, throws off his balance quite a bit. And it actually was kind of a challenge to get him to stand steady on the turntable. But without further ado, let's just dive right on into this figure and let's take a look at his box. So his box, of course, I like the boxes for the Tekken figures. You got a nice picture of the figure on the front. You have a very nice window here. Legal jargon and everything on the bottom, all your, stamps. On the top, you have King, Tekken 8. On the side, you have the video game render of the character. On the back, you have all those lovely promotional shots. All your legal jargon on the bottom. Another picture of the figure on the bottom. And that about does it. That spine, another picture of the figure. But all in all, just really nice box. No complaints there. Decent packaging. Now, let's see if I can scoot him over here without him falling or anything like that. Onto the figure himself. Here is the SH Figuarts King. And let me adjust my camera and everything accordingly. That way, for the first part of the review here, we're just going to let him spin. And I'm just going to go over paint and details and everything for you while you guys get a nice 360 view of the figure. This is going to kind of eliminate more of the hands-on stuff, unless I really want to get in close and point something out. But the hands-on stuff will come more towards articulation and everything like that. But King here, sporting all different kinds of colors. For those that don't know or are maybe curious to know a little King lore, King is human. I know it's been very discussed over the years on, is he like some sort of alien? Is he some supernatural being? Because he talks like a jaguar, he has a jaguar head, and he makes jaguar noises. He doesn't make any human noises, but King is human. He is from Mexico. He is a luchador. And basically the way it goes is, King fights for, raising money and stuff for this orphanage because he himself grew up as an orphan. And so he wants to give back to charity and, takes care of kids in his orphanage and stuff like that. And that is what King fights for. He fights for all the kids and everything like that. So very good causes. And then, of course, there's more to do with Armor King, which is like an evil older king or, thought to be dead or, I don't know all the lore behind the character, but I know a little bit just to give you guys a gist. But he is human. He's a luchador wrestler. He's big, beefy. And considering being a WWE fan for as long as I have been, not so much now. I don't necessarily like WWE anymore. It doesn't necessarily have the same feel that it once did. But I will say, after all these years, King here is actually my first wrestling figure that I've ever owned. I've never owned a Triple H figure, never owned a Randy Orton figure, nothing like that. I never bought any wrestling figures or been into that or anything like that. But this almost makes me want to go out and buy some of the WWE figures and pose him with this guy. I think that would be fun and fun photo opportunities. Again, if you follow Godzilla Fan Freaks over on the Facebook and Instagram pages, you guys will see some of my figure photography that I do. I am nothing special or nothing, you know, far from pro status, but from the pictures I do take and, you know, dressing them up a bit in some editing and everything like that, I'll say I take some decent pictures at that. So if you like some figure photography and stuff like that, make sure you like and follow Godzilla Fan Freaks over on Facebook and Instagram so you can see all of those great things. Speaking of which, my pictures of this guy were used in the thumbnail for today's video, and the thumbnail was created by my buddy Nick Adams over on the Monster Report, so let's give him a round of applause. If you haven't checked out the Monster Report, please do so. Great guy, great content. Looking forward to our Godzilla Day stream coming up here soon. So, now back into this figure. King has all kinds of colors, all kinds of, you know, details in there from his muscle tone and everything like that. But let's just go on his colors. You know, King's got blacks, he's got light blues, dark blues, he's got reds, he's got silvers, he's got mustard yellows, he's got a little bit of gold in there, he's got pinkish purplish hues. Of course, he has oranges, bone ivory, green. I mean, King is just full of color here, from his tights and to his cape. You know, just very nice colors all the way around, all in his flare and everything up top here with his feathers and all his, you know, kind of like Aztec type jewelry. You know, he has all his like little tassels and, you know, things hanging off of his. Again, I call it all of his flair. You know, his wrestling boots and tights. Again, you have all those blues, yellows, some whites, some silvers. All of it just blends really, really good together, where again, Tamashii Nations nabs it on the head with the quality control of the paint, because there is no bit of slop on this figure. Even up on his head, when you get close to his face, all his like jaguar spots and everything like that, they're clean, they're pristine. There's nothing that looks offset, nothing that looks like it was just globbed on there. Very, very nice paint applications all the way around with this guy. All the lines and everything on his cape within the silver and stuff, very nice and clean. Everything to like his little gems in his Aztec jewelry, those reds and blues and everything. Very, very nicely painted. None of it bleeds outside of its lines. You know, all the linings and everything on his tights. Oh, it just looks great. Again, where is this paint quality when it comes to so many other of their products? And again, this guy is way cheaper. And he's flawless in the paint department. Paint department, colors look great. Nice tannish skin for the body, just looks great. Detail wise, everything, again, just all the waves. Even though he has a plastic cape, I would have rather have gone with a cloth cape with this figure myself if I was in the decision-making department for Tamashii Nations. On their Tekken figures, I would have gone with a cloth cape. The plastic cape on this guy, even though it looks good at the end of the day, it messes with him a little bit. It messes with his balance. It makes it hard for him to stand. You can remove the cape altogether, but then again, with all his other flair that he has, it just doesn't look right just to take the cape off. You know, you'd have to take off everything, which is, if you take off everything, he's got pegs on his shoulders that shoot up through, you know, his top piece here and then into the feather mold. So, you know, this figure has its hit or misses on certain choices, certain design choices. I want to say that's where the quality suffers on this guy, because detail wise, all the muscle tone is there. You get really nice patterns and details, again, in his tights down to his laced boots. You know, it's just not painted on there. That stuff is etched into the detail. It's raised. You can feel it. And, from all his tassels to his gloves on both hands, again, all the Aztec jewelry jewelry in the chest and all the feathers and detail up around the top of the head. And again, just the waves and the way the cape is molded. Everything just looks good. Jaguar head looks really nice. Ears, eyes, teeth, very nicely sculpted, very beautifully painted. Again, detail and paint-wise, this figure is a straight out 10 out of 10. No complaints with it whatsoever. Let me go ahead and just turn off the turntable here. Swing that backwards. And let's get a closer look at King here, looking at some of those finer details. And then, of course, we will get into articulation. And after that, we will get into accessories. But again, look at what I'm saying about all the texture. I mean, look at that texture in his tights. And again, just the paintwork, it's clean. There's no bit of slop. There's no bit of scratches. Even on his tail, which again, his tail is hidden by the cape. You know, and again, in my opinion, you can take the cape off. It's just held on there by a ball joint sticking out of his back. But again, without being able to remove everything else nicely and make it look good, he just doesn't look the same without the cape if he has all his flair on. Which again, I wish that they did make it an option to remove this stuff a little better, because again, I'll show you the example here. So as you can see, you see those pegs? So those just stick up right out off of the body. And so if you were to remove all his flair, which you could, you can slide this right over, his head or pop his head off and take it off that way. But then you have these really ugly pegs just sticking up, so it's like you almost have no choice but to have this guy with his cape on, full of his flair, and mess with him forever just to try to get him to balance correctly. Because again, this cape, with it being plastic, it has some weight to it, and it throws off his balance. He has very beefy, sturdy legs, but that cape just overthrows that. And then you have these big old feathers here, which this is one solid piece. This is a very heavy, hefty piece of plastic. I mean, you take it off, it is solid all the way around. You just have the peg holes and then that little line groove where everything just kind of sits in nicely. But other than that, that is one solid piece of plastic, and even that adds weight to him. So it's like everything just kind of hurts that way. But again, you got really nice muscle tone. Articulation, though, is decent on this guy. I mean, his articulation, I will say, is not as good as Kazuya or Jin's, just because he's beefier. He's more built. He's buff. He's a big wrestler. So, but articulation, his head can look up ever so far. You can look down very, very far. Of course, you can look left, you can look right. It is limited by his flair, but again, if you take all that off, you just have to deal with the pegs, but you can get more movement out of the head if you were to remove all of his flair up here. Up in his shoulders, he's got really nice rotations and hinges and ball joints. He's got butterfly joints in there, as you can see. But even with the butterfly joints, you can't bring his fists totally close together. They end up spreading apart to where you can't even get, if I can just get him to stand there on his cape, you can't get him to like do a pose like this, cupping a fist. That would be a good simple pose to put this guy in, but you cannot complete that pose with what is here as far as his joints go. But bicep swivel, really nice elbows. He's got hinges and everything in the wrists, very nicely well done. The hands on mine will sometimes, they're not very hard to take off because they're on pegs. They're not on ball joints. So keep that in mind, that these are pegs. And what also makes it a little difficult for those to get a nice secure grip is he has these little tassels that come off. And those are a separate piece entirely within the joint in there. So then it kind of creates a little bit more thickness to where his hands don't go in all the way. I have heard some people complain about the tassels, especially like these ones above his elbow on the back of his biceps. You know, they're just ball joints. They're nothing crazy, but at least mine, they don't seem to pop out easily. I've seen some other reviews on this guy, and I guess some people do have some loose ball joints for their tassels to where their tassels will fall out periodically, but mine, not too bad. So I'm thankful for that, but then that just shows the quality control issues that Tamashii Nation still deals with is, you know, again, just make these figures the same across the board. You know, try not to have so many issues. He's got really good range of motion here for his ab crunch and abdomen area. You get all kinds of tilts and turns and swivels. You know, he's got a waist joint down there too as well, so you can turn his waist. His legs have an older Tamashii Nation joint system. He has the old pull-down type legs, which again can look ugly, especially on a big beefy figure like this. Why he doesn't have the updated, you know, leg system here. Granted, his legs might be a little bit thicker than Kazuya and Jin. Again, all you do is you adjust the joint. You make the joints bigger, you make the joints thicker, and it can have the same type of movement, but it does limit his range. He does kick forward very, very nice. You know, he does have nice knees. You know, they get him to do what he wants to do. You can point his toes all the way down. You know, decent ankle pivots, nothing crazy, but he does have a little bit of a toe articulation also in the boot. But again, where I want to just point out is I would have did the newer system for this. It would have worked better. Who knows? It might have even had more stability and to where his cape doesn't throw him off. His tail is also on a joint, but you can kind of just move that however you see fit. Again, it's hard to see it with the cape, but again, you almost can't opt a different look for this guy without all his flair. It just doesn't look right, and then you have those ugly pegs. So overall, paint detail-wise, absolutely fantastic. This figure is it's phenomenal. Articulation, it's pretty good. It's decent. Not so much quality issues as to more just design choices, I feel like would have suited this guy a little bit better. As far as accessories go for this guy, this is where, you know, King is very basic. He comes with all different kinds of hands. You know, you come with more like open, laxed type hands. You get 2 of those. Of course, he has 2 fists, which are on his body right now. He has these more open, kind of grappling, ready to grab hands. And then he comes with a pointing hand. You know, like he's pointing at his opponent or pointing at the crowd or something like that, which, in my opinion, if there was an accessory I would have put with this guy, I would have not even just had it as a separate piece, just have it molded to a hand. I would have had a hand come with like a microphone to where then you can have him acting like he's talking to the crowd. You know, he's talking trash to his opponent, talking to the crowd. Missed opportunity for a simple, just little extra accessory for King, because granted, he's a wrestler. There's not much you can throw at him except some extra hands. But something like a hand with a molded microphone, I feel like is a missed opportunity. He definitely needed a microphone. That would have been, you know, at least something cool that I'm sure any King fan or Tekken fan would have appreciated. Other than that, his other accessory, he does come with a background similar to Kazuya and Jin. Kazuya came with the city, downtown background. Jin came with like a forest area hut, training ground background. And then, of course, King, I had a feeling he was going to come with the Iron Fist tournament ring, and so he does. And so this is by far a great background to add for taking pictures of your figures, figure photography, what it may be. And so now having 3 different choices, it's nice to have those between all my figures, not just my Tekken figures. I can use these with Kamen Rider figures. I could use them with Godzilla figures. You know, whatever ends up working, you can just use those as you see fit. But without further ado, you guys, let me go ahead and just get King, you know, somewhat placed on here. Again, I'm not going to spend the time to make him look super pretty. But that about does it for today's figure review, everybody. Hope you enjoyed. You know, King, I will say not as good as Kazuya or Jin, but I still have to say humanoid-wise, in that 6-inch scale-wise, the Tekken figures from Tamashii Nation's Figuarts are some of the best action figures that I own today. Just the joints, the articulation, the amount of detail, and the quality you get for a much cheaper figure versus, you know, a Jet Jaguar or a Godzilla or anything like that. And again, there's all different kinds of things that go into it, from the IP to, you know, how expensive these licenses and characters are. And then, of course, the makers and everything put in their percentage of a price point also. But the Tekken figures are really affordable. And if you just want some nice, good, solid action figures, you know, and the Tekken guys, they look cool, you know, they're fun. Even if you're not a big fan of Tekken, you know, or maybe from watching these videos, maybe you dive into Tekken a little bit. Maybe you check out the older games. Maybe you check out the newer games. Maybe you're like, you know what, I kind of like these guys. And there's these awesome figures I can get of them for a reasonable price. There you go. You know, that is what figure reviews and everything are all about. So at the end of the day, King, not as good as the other two releases, Kazuya and Jin. I do not have Nina from this line. I don't plan to pick up Nina, just because I don't like Nina as a character. I like Kazuya as a character. I like Jin as a character. I like King as a character. You know, if they come out with something like Yoshimitsu, I'd probably pick him up too. But it's like Nina just doesn't necessarily float my boat, and not interested in picking it up. But from the other two Tekken figures, King here, a little bit of a step down, but still a decent figure overall. Anyway, you guys, that's enough blabbering. Hope you enjoyed my review today on Tamashii Nation's SH Figuarts King figure from Tekken 8. Please comment, like, and subscribe. Don't forget to atomic blast that notification bell, all those great things. Like and follow Godzilla Fan Freaks over on Facebook and Instagram. That way you don't miss anything there. Keep an eye out on Saturdays for my live stream shows, Kaiju Chill O'Clock. And other than that, you guys, hope you enjoyed today's review. We are Godzilla Fan Freaks, and we will see you in the next video. Thank you for watching.